Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive. So if you're caught in that constant push and pull between your work life and your personal life, especially now, right, with all the flexible and hybrid work models blurring the lines, then you probably know that the old advice about work-life balance just, well, it doesn't really land anymore. The sources we're looking at today dive right into this mess. They offer a really interesting custom toolkit. We're calling it the Head and Heart Framework. Yeah, we're digging into strategies for making work sustainable, looking hard at communication and time management research, and just for fun, because history gives context. A lot of this thinking connects back to Rutgers, the university that got history. They even won the very first college football game against Princeton, 6-4, way back in 1869. Talk about strategy, huh? Anyway, our goal today isn't just separation. That's the old way. We want to show you how balancing the logical planning side, that's the head, with real emotional awareness, the heart. That's the key. It's about achieving this dynamic integration for how we work now.
Exactly. And we really have to start by acknowledging a built-in bias. Historically, we've tilted heavily towards the head. If you trace human societies, you see this shift, right? From more, let's say, holistic, primitive ways to modern life, where the rational and logical just took over. Our sources actually call this the rationalist bias. For centuries, the intuitive, the imaginative, the feeling part, the heart has been pushed aside, especially in work and intellectual spheres. So the head, pretty clear, right? Rational, logical, the part we feel we can control. But the heart, that's different. It's intuition, feelings, and crucially, it's often not under our direct command. It gets swayed by appearances, by immediate gut reactions. So the core idea here, the thesis, is that work-life balance isn't about building walls. It works best when logic and emotion collaborate. And when that happens, you get authenticity, which builds trust. And maybe most importantly for today's world, it helps fight that deep burnout that comes from feeling pulled in two directions.
I think that really hits home for anyone trying to make hybrid work work. I mean, if your office is your kitchen table, you can't just flip a switch and be off. The old boundaries are just gone. That's precisely why we need this idea of dynamic integration that the sources talk about.
Right.
So if separation was the old goal, integration is the new one.
Yeah.
But like smart integration. Which means success isn't just about productivity anymore, those head metrics. It has to be holistic. It's got to include the heart stuff too, emotional resilience, getting along with people. If you hit all your targets but you're snapping at your family every night, that's not success, is it?
That holistic perspective forces you immediately to look at how you spend your time and how you communicate, because those two, they're completely linked. Communication sets the priorities for your tasks, and time management is how you make sure your messages actually line up with your deadlines, your resources. They're two sides of one coin, really.
Okay, so how does the head and heart framework fit in there?
Perfectly, actually. The head takes care of the logic, the clear message structure, the schedule, the mechanics of it all. But the heart, that's what shapes the tone. The empathy you need, the emotional connection that makes the message actually land. You absolutely need both. And what's fascinating in the research is seeing how many of those common time sucks are really head-heart conflicts playing out. We all know the list, right?
Yeah.
Trying to multitask, drowning in email, those meetings that go nowhere. And then the really personal ones like perfectionism or being afraid to fail, putting things off, poor prioritizing.
Hold on, those last few. Perfectionism, fear of failure, procrastination, they feel purely emotional, like heart problems. But you're saying they mess up our schedules. How does that internal conflict kill our efficiency?
Oh, absolutely. Think about it. The heart feels the fear, right? That fear can trigger procrastination, which is really a head failure, a failure to structure and prioritize effectively. The emotion literally sabotages the logical plan. And more directly, the sources talk about how things like appearance-based biases and this feeling of perceived urgency just crank up our stress levels. You see that inbox with 20 screaming red flags. Your heart reacts to the appearance of crisis. Fight or flight kicks in. Even if the head logically knows, most of it can wait.
Okay. So the head knows it's low importance, but the heart's already panicking because it looks urgent.
Exactly. And that conflict, that cognitive dissonance, it's exhausting. That's why we end up stuck in that high urgency, low importance zone so often. It feels important because it's noisy.
Right. Okay. So this is where that idea comes in, using emotionally aware strategies to use your heart to slow down your head, using your intuition to catch faulty logic. And there's a specific tool mentioned that seems to bridge this gap really well, the Pomodoro technique. At first glance, it seems like pure head, doesn't it? Super structured, 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off. Logical time boxing.
Rigid structure.
But then you might think, isn't that rigidity kind of ignoring the heart's need for flexibility? But the sources argue its effectiveness is actually very heart-based. because it gives you explicit permission to stop, to rest.
Ah, okay. It
Yeah.
addresses the emotional drain.
Exactly. It breaks down that feeling of endless, overwhelming work into manageable chunks. It manages the stress response. So the head provides the structure, the container, but the heart gets the sustainable focus it needs.
That's a great example. And shifting from managing time to actually delivering messages, empathy becomes absolutely critical, especially with diverse teams, different cultures, generations, roles. Logical clarity, the head part, that's just the starting point. But without emotional resonance, the heart part, the message just falls flat, doesn't stick.
So how do you build that resonance?
Well, the sources point to specific techniques. Things like storytelling, using metaphors or figurative language, rhetorical devices. These aren't just fancy writing tricks, they're tools the heart understands. They reduce tension, get people engaged, help complex ideas sink in intuitively, not just rationally. And this means we have to think differently about inclusivity, too. It requires the heart to be tuned in, picking up on nonverbal cues, emotional context, even the subtle ones in digital communication. Because you can have the clearest message ever, logically speaking, but if you haven't considered the recipient's emotional state or context, it can still land completely wrong.
Yeah, that context piece feels crucial, especially when we talk about working together. Which brings us to meetings, right? We need to move beyond just having meetings to creating purposeful and inclusive ones. Okay, so purposeful meetings, that sounds like the head needs to step up. Clear goals, desired outcomes, and critically, deciding when a meeting is even necessary versus just sending a message. If the head says this can be an email, you save everyone that time and, frankly, the emotional energy drain of another meeting.
That's a huge one, the unnecessary meeting tax.
Right. And when you do meet, the sources talk about managing emotional labor. They introduce this term deep acting, which I found fascinating.
It's different from just faking it.
Exactly. Faking a smile, that's surface acting, and apparently causes a lot of internal stress. But deep acting is when your head and heart align. You actively work to connect your internal feelings with the professional behavior needed. So the head might set the meeting's logical goals, but the heart is engaged in managing morale, finding a genuine connection to why you're all there.
And this whole challenge, aligning logic and emotion, it just gets amplified like crazy in the digital workspace, especially with AI entering the picture and the constant connectivity. We absolutely need the head to guide how we use AI. These tools are great for scheduling, filtering noise, summarizing long emails, even drafting basic stuff. Big boost for cognitive efficiency. The head loves that automation.
But okay, here's the potential trap. If we automate too much, does the heart just get bypassed? How does the head make sure we don't accidentally outsource our empathy to a bot, creating interactions that are efficient but, cold and inhuman?
That is precisely the risk. And the constant connection. That puts the heart on high alert all the time, reacting to those appearances of urgency we talked about. So to counter that, the heart needs boundaries, real intentional boundaries. Managing notifications isn't just about time, it's about emotional protection.
Okay, so intentional boundaries for the heart. What about the AI piece?
With AI, the head has to deliberately build in friction points, places where a human steps in, reviews the tone, adds a personal touch, something maybe not strictly efficient, but human. This is the head setting a rule to protect the heart's need for genuine connection. The sources are really clear on this. When logic guides your tech use and emotion keeps it human, AI becomes a tool, not a trap. It boils down to intentionality.
Okay, so we've got the framework. The challenge is, what does this actually mean for, your daily life? How do you put this into practice? Let's synthesize this. We pulled 5 concrete actions from the framework to help you align your habits, get your head and heart working together. Action 1, time audit and emotional reflection. Okay, head does the audit.
Yeah.
Look at your calendar, see where the time really went. But then the heart reflects. Look at next week's schedule. What's your gut reaction? Shoulders tense up. Stomach clench. That's the heart signaling potential overload. The head needs to listen to that data.
That's a great point. The physical reaction is data.
Totally. Action 2. Align commitments with deep values. Don't just schedule around deadlines. Schedule around what actually matters to you, your core values, your real communication goals. The head plans the timeline, sure, but the heart needs to confirm the why. Is this commitment actually worthwhile? If a meeting doesn't serve a core value, use the head's logic to politely decline.
Yeah, be intentional about that alignment. Which leads nicely to action 3. Setting empathetic boundaries. This is pure head and heart working together. The head provides the logical structure, what the boundary is, why it's needed to protect focus or prevent burnout. but the heart delivers the message how you communicate it. So instead of just, no, can't do that, it's maybe, my focus is on X right now, but I could offer you time on Wednesday morning. Logic defines it. Empathy
Well,
delivers.
that protects you without burning bridges.
Exactly. Action 4. Commit to a head-heart habit. Pick one thing, just one new habit that intentionally combines a cognitive strategy, like time boxing or filtering emails, with an emotional safeguard, like building in mandatory breaks or specific times to disconnect. That Pomodoro technique is a perfect example. You have to consciously practice merging the two.
Practice the integration. Yeah.
And finally, action 5. Be your authentic self. Ultimately, this is about reducing that internal friction between work you and life you. And the framework is the daily test for this. If the structures your head creates your schedule, your communication habits genuinely support the connection and emotional well-being your heart needs, then that feeling of being split, that dissonance, it starts to fade.
So wrapping up this deep dive, it seems clear that the answer to the modern work-life challenge isn't about building higher walls between merging parts of our lives. It's about this dynamic integration, using the head for structure, for logic, for efficiency, and using the heart for connection, for empathy, for tone, and for managing our own emotional health. They have to work together.
Absolutely. And as you start trying these habits, especially since so much of our work connection now happens through screens, here's something to chew on. The sources remind us the heart is really affected by appearances, but our digital tools strip away so much body language, tone of voice, context. So the provocative question is, how does your head ensure the boundaries you set, the messages you send, are truly empathetic when you're missing all that rich, nonverbal emotional data? What information gets lost in translation through the screen, and what extra steps do you need to take intentionally every day to fill that gap? That, I think, is the ongoing work of dynamic integration.